Battlegrounds Season 31, best options in Victory Track to make that climb up to Gladiator Circuit, Gladiator Circuit weeks 1 to 2 and 3 to 4. Let's have a look at some of the best options and interesting counters. Season 31 leads to a very interesting setup, whether you are going to be Saga-based champions in attack or are you going to be doing the normal counters. How you set up will be mainly around this Invisible Woman finesse buff, which is dodging grants a 0.5 second untouchable passive, making you, of course, invisible and, well, not invisible, but it will enable you to miss, and you'll gain cruelty passives as a result, and 5 cruelties gets your critical rating ridiculously high. And the champions that applies for can be seen on screen right now. If they've got a Saga champion tag, which is of course the 4, then that means that they're going to be relatively effective. That doesn't mean that these are going to be the champions that are going to be the best options to take into the mode in attack. And there's actually 2 things I think is important to emphasize this particular season. Number 1 being power gain, or not the power gain buff, but yes, that, and abilities that will gain power rapidly, but also nullification immunity. You can find information around this video's just written portion of things, but if you're not interested in watching the video, then just give this video a like and at least check out the description for that. But yeah, support the channel. You know, it means a lot. It takes a lot of effort to kind of put these together, so I appreciate anybody that's willing to come and support this stuff. So first of all, Exonerable is an interesting one. If you've played Serpent, you know exactly what we're talking about. And that will allow for champions cannot be pushed back by basics, and the power they gain by basics is increased. So throwing a special attack may be the way, but theoretically the champion you face off against the defender is going to build a lot of power. So you could say that, well, if I am triggering off an Exonerable, then I need either Nullification Immune, non-buff champions or buff immunity based champions, or power control champions. Providing you don't get hit in a block, which is not exactly easy to say to any player. Don't get hit in a block. Woo, yeah, because that's always going to be achievable with the current state of AI. And of course, the aggressive nature of some champions, especially as they are going to be quite aggressive. So you're going to be hit in the block, which then could trigger that inexorable, which basically means they're going to build power. There's also something that goes with that, and they've got Power Snack in with this. Every 7 seconds, the next buff triggered by the attack is immediately nullified. Each time this triggers, defender gains 25% of a bar of power. This is why I mentioned either it's buff immunity champions, it's going to be buff anti-nullification champions, so nullify immune champions, or you bring power control champions in attack to counter the situations that's going to be presented on itself. So in attack format, you could have the Dr. Dooms, who's also a Saga-based champion, a champion that I'm really coming to like, Shathra, SP1 rotations with Guillotine 2099, the recently buffed Dr. Voodoo, Nullify Immunity with the Overseer, Gallon, White Tiger, Omega Sentinel, and many more. But don't write off those buff immunity options like Titania, Spider-Man 2099, recently added to game High Evolutionary, and many more. But of course, that doesn't mean that you're going to have the opportune defender in place. A lot of times it's going to be frustrating defenders that you will need specific counters to, and just generally will be annoying. You'd like to say that you'd have the perfect counter in this instance for the likes of Bishop, or it's going to be Onslaught, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work out to how you like, and you might have to just be very careful on who you're choosing champion-wise to the counter in place, or it might be a very rough season for you. Or maybe the counters will work, the attackers you're going to use against the defenders. Why I cannot recommend one specific or a grouping of champions that are going to be theoretically frustrating. I've done a bit of a go with it. I do think that champions that are able to gain a lot of power very quickly, so right at the bottom there, so your Xerxes, your America Chavez, your Airwalkers, your Destroyers, Enchantress, Wiccan, Iron Man Infinity War, Super Skrull, Vision Arcus. I think that might be a really good one this season, by the way. So I think having a Doctor Doom or an effective Mystic counter may be a very good option. Hyperion, Wong, and Purgatory. The reason I've recommended them is they just build a lot of power really, really quickly. And unless you have the ability to suppress it, imagine that inexorable and that nullification of buff that's going to come in. If they're building 25% upwards to a bar of power, like that, you know, Hyperion could have an SP3. Vision Arcus is going to launch an SP3 as well. Super Scroll's going to launch an SP2, and that's not the greatest to try and evade. Airwalker goes straight into an SP3. Destroyer goes into an SP3. If those things happen and you can't suppress them, game over, my friend. So those are my top recommendations for champions to kind of go in as defense options, but there's probably going to be more, and frustrating defenders will probably be better than others. So let's go on to Gladiator Circuit options. I know a lot of people have their champions they use and their own structure of play. So recommending to people in Gladiator Circuit is always very difficult because you have your own structure of play and champions that are always top rated. But there are some interesting options to put in that could be a little bit frustrating. Whether or not you go the same route, in the first weeks of 1 to 2, it's going to be exactly the same. And the champions I recommended for Victory Track are largely going to be the ones that I recommend the same place for weeks 1 and weeks 2. And I suppose the biggest kind of change, or not substantial, but big enough that it's important to mention, is the placebo buff. And this kind of points you in a direction of using buff immunity-based champions because you're not going to trigger quite so much. And the defenders, which you could have more mystics, if you're launching if you have a champion that's got a load of buffs, then of course that creates a problem. It makes that the cosmic line as counters to the mystics, you're not going to do that. So a mystic like a Symbiote Supreme being put in defense is basically going to punish you if you're using a champion that's going to gain buffs. That's why more commonly you'll use champions with buff immunity. So champions like Spider-Man 2099 Titania, Red Guardian, then we've got Cassie Lang, Ant-Man, Spot, and High Evolution are largely going to be the champions that I would recommend because it just bypasses a lot of pain points and problems. And that doesn't work out for every single champion because, again, same example as before. If Onslaught is a defender, who are you going to take in against that? Are you going to take in Spider-Man 2099, Titania, etc.? Because it may not work. It may work to a degree, but it may not be the best option overall. I actually think weeks 3 to 4 of Gladiator Circuit may be the better opportunity to be proactive, and that is mainly because, unless you're doing the tournament, the Battleground Brawl prep stuff, it's just that the champions that you've got as an option are a bit more wider of the net rather than those that are kind of like in the early stages, because it is a little bit more frustrating having placebo as that extra buff. But you could switch to more power control based champions, which again could be helpful if you're finding that the power, you want to have the best champions to counter as possible, but maybe some of the tech line like Vision Deathless don't kind of like, you know, poo-poo the champions that are able to power control rather effectively. Even Mysterio does some power controlling. But there could be some good options, some good champions that could be helpful if you can't do buff immunity and you have to use a specific champion to counter what is like a tricky mutant, for example. And when Gladiator Circuit weeks 3 to 4 come around, this is actually a little bit better because we've got Foresight. When the attacker performs an intercept, they gain 200% attack rating, meaning it's more fun. And also Defender gains Unstoppable buff for 4 seconds with Fight or Flight. But if you're away from the Defender, it will trigger for you and you'll get the Unstoppable as a result. And also, if the defender is struck by a basic attack while stunned, 100% chance to purify the stun and evade the attack. Now, that basically means don't parry. But you might want to parry. This is where I think things get a little bit fun. So for week 3, you could use frustrating champions in general. Any defender's annoying. If you have a champion that's anti-intercept, then of course that's great. But if you've got a champion that is, and a good example would be Spider-Man, I think Spider-Punk, and what's the other one? I said Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. No, it's Negasonic Teenage Warhead. If you use those two champions, they kind of like have the mechanics could be quite frustrating. And there's others. But if you want to go down the route of anti-evade based champions, I think these are good selections, and you might have a little bit more fun if in attack you're using the likes of Serpent, Killmonger, Mole Man, Hitmonkey, Bastion, Apocalypse, Prowler, Bullseye, and it goes on. I'm not listing every single one of them because you can see with your own eyes who are some of the champions that I'm recommending. They either have access to things like True Focus, True Accuracy, or have anti-evade based mechanics like Pursuit. The newest ones coming in have been Prowler and Bastion with this Pursuit based mechanic to them that I've really enjoyed. So maybe that, and I really want to get Bastion in the next Titan Crystal. I really do. So it's just options that you might think would be good for that. I personally think they're going to be some of the best ones. Easy access to those true strike, true accuracy, or anti-evade based mechanics, and you're quite simply doing an intercept based attack, getting the power rating, getting the kind of ability to suppress any kind of evade, and be able to have a nice relaxing time whilst parrying and bypassing that particular pain point. So yeah, who are going to be your top options for the upcoming Alliance War season, Battleground season? And yeah, that's going to be it for the video. Put in the comments who you're using, who you think might work, might not work, and go and check out the link in the description. Support the channel with a like, that'd be really helpful, and I'll see you all soon. Have a lovely day and goodbye.